You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week on the Beardcast, as we're making our way through the book of Genesis, we have stopped at chapter 4, and are going to look at that classic story of Cain and Abel. And so, Zach, I'm going to let you unpack that and get us started here.
Yeah, certainly. So Cain and Abel is one of those stories that, I don't know, I find it fascinating, the children's Sunday school stories that we make into coloring sheets. And it feels like this is always one of those. And it is not a child-friendly story. But I feel like most of us, or people who are aware of who Cain and Abel are, we kind of know the gist of the story. And that's about all we know. We know that Adam and Eve, they have these kids, Cain and Abel. Abel is a shepherd, Cain is a farmer, essentially. And those are the tasks they've been called to be stewards of, shepherding sheep, tilling the land and caring for it in that way. And in return, Cain and Abel both go and present offerings to God. Abel's offering is seen pleasing to God. Cain's not so much. And we just kind of gloss over that. And then it makes Cain angry. And he goes and he kills his brother, and you get the beautiful response from Cain of talking to God asking, "Where's your brother Abel?" And Cain says, "I don't know. I'm not my brother's guardian. Not my job," essentially, right? And so Cain and God have this this really short conversation of basically, what did you do? You killed your brother? Okay, now this is what happens. You're exiled, or you're leaving this place. You'll become a nomad. The land that you have been entrusted to, right, called to be a good steward of, will no longer produce anything for you. You'll move from place to place. Your family will be, your descendants will be in the same shape too. And it just kind of snowballs from there. But I think what we don't, that's the gist of the story, right? And as Matt and I were getting kind of our thoughts together on this, we really landed on, we don't talk a whole lot about what's happening here. We talk about the relationship between Cain and Abel, and maybe a little bit about Cain and God going out, but there's so much more here. And so I'll let Matt unpack a little bit of that part of it.
So you're right. The deep dive on this, I mean, we probably could have still been talking about it, just what we were unpacking for hours, because it seemed like it was definitely like an onion, and it has many layers, and this has such. And I kind of I want to start with that kind of the opening idea of that with this story is that that where they come from matters, and that they're both children of Adam and Eve. And so here we are fresh off of the creation story into this story, and by this time Adam and Eve have been remember that by this time Adam and Eve have been exiled out of the promised land because of their ill-advised decision not to follow the command of God. And here we are, we're back in this again. And so I see this again, is that like, here we are, you have this opportunity to do what, God requires of you to do. And the response of it is not a healthy response. And we see that this offering that was offered wasn't satisfying to God. And I think as Zach and I kind of, when we unpack this, it had everything to do with more of an attitude of stewardship, of being thankful for God, what God has blessed him with, and sharing that fullness versus just looking at what Abel gave and be like, yeah, this is good. We're, he gave this, I'll give this, no big deal. And then when God questions him on it, instead of saying, okay, what can I do to make this better? He gets resentful and angry. And those are two things that never go well. Think about it when you have children or around people, and the response of how you are trying to get them to, do the right thing matters. If they're graceful and they, you want to work with them. If they're angry and hateful, it becomes a little bit of a struggle. And I think in this story, I think there's some things that we can, at least especially in this first chunk here, we break it down and see that there's some of us in this, are asking ourselves, are we thankful for what God gives us? How do we respond to the gift that God gives us? And then as we move into, the adjustment, how Cain responds, Cain obviously does not respond very well to Abel, his brother, by murdering him. And then stuff ensues. And so, so Zach, as you kind of unpack that first little section there, what stirs up within you?
Well, and I think that's what it is. We run through this so quickly, whether it's here on the podcast or as Sunday school with kids, or even in sermons, right? We don't often. I don't know that more often than not, I hear this story of Cain and Abel in the context of don't be like Cain, and not in the sense of don't be like Cain and offer things and be resentful about it, but don't be like Cain and go kill your brother, right? Make sure you have a good, healthy relationship with your literal brothers, and then your neighbors, the brothers and sisters and siblings that surround you, right? That's almost every time it seems like this is talked about. That's what it is. It's the relationship between people, and yet there's so much more, and it's so much deeper in the relationship that people that we have with God. And Cain's whole thing here is he's disappointed that God didn't like his offering, and we're not told what the offering is. We're told what Abel's is, and he takes his flock's oldest offspring with their fat and gives it to God. He gives the best to God, right? Cain, not so much, and we don't know what it is, but what it does say is Cain became very angry and looked resentful. And God has the question, why are you angry? Why do you look so resentful? And so we see, we hear a lot about Old Testament angry, spiteful God, and yet you see a lot of grace here. Why are you mad? Why do you look resentful? Is it, is what you did okay, right? In this moment where God's trying to walk Cain to that place of, oh, I gave with this resentful heart, and I didn't give from the best. And so here's what I do to fix that. Yet Cain takes us the other way, and he's like, hey, Abel, let's go to the field, and kills him, right?
I always think of it, and Zach, you have brothers, so you know this too. Yes. Hey, let's go outside.
No, I'm not going outside with you.
Yeah. And I always knew that when my brother said, hey, let's go outside, that means that I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah. Hard pass.
Hard pass. And I think that's where that pivot happens. Like, and we pivot into the next side of the story, and that, God comes to Cain and says, hey, where's your brother? And Cain, like, this is the best brother response. Am I I don't know. My brother, am I cared for my brother?
Not his mom. Not his dad. Mom.
Like, I don't know. I love God's next line. What did you do? Like, I can't tell you the number of times I heard from my mother. What'd you do?
What did you do? Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, God feels the pain of loss of Abel, and it's his blood is crying from the ground, and and then God responds,
right? And he responds in such a way that so when you get into words, and words are important, this is the first time really sin in the word sin is used in scripture altogether. But what we see with that is not, here's the wrong thing that happened, is here's how the relationship begins to break between Cain and God. Here's how Cain's action moves him further away from God, and quite literally because God exiles them. But God's there with them. God exiles them to this place, says, the land's not going to do the thing that it's supposed to do for you, yet you're just going to travel around. But God's still there. Cain goes from those moments and bears children, builds a city, and starts to build community around that. And yet God's still there with Cain. God doesn't abandon Cain in those moments. But their relationship is strained at that point, as we saw with Adam and Eve, right? They get exiled from the Garden of Eden. God doesn't leave them. They just have to leave that particular place, right? God is still walking with them along the way.
And we got to have in the back of our head the reason why this is another good sign of God's grace early on in the scriptures is that, God definitely does not want us to kill creation. Especially in a malice like this, like this was, that was wrong, and the way that God would have handled that, from kind of an understanding standpoint was to, all right, I'm going to take care of you now, and kill you, and God doesn't do that. Instead, God gives Cain an opportunity to, I always say an opportunity for redemption and an opportunity to be better and an opportunity of grace here. Right. But what's funny about that, if you look at it, Cain's not happy with the punishment,
right? Even
the punishment that he's offered. So this could almost say that maybe Cain's never really happy with what God always gives him.
Sure.
And maybe, and that's why God struggles with Cain too, is that, God's like, hey, I give you all this stuff. I've taken care of you. I provided for you. And yet you're still not satisfied. I mean, wow. Like, I mean, verse 13 kind of hit me on that, is that, like, here we have Cain's giving an opportunity to live, to continue to be around. It may not be on his terms, but it's on God's terms. And he's not happy with the punishment.
Right.
And then even then, God even responds again, like, I'm going to take care of you. And there's definitely not.
Right. Because that's his concern of, well, you've sent me, the land's not going to do what it is. That punishment's more than I can bear. You've essentially made me a nomad, and somebody's going to kill me. And God's response is, no, I'll still protect you. And anybody that kills you, their punishment will be, 7 times more. We could get into what the mark on his face means. Folks talk about the mark of Cain all the time and what that means, right? What that is. And yet it's essentially for Cain, it's just this mark so people will know who he is and understand what would be coming their way if they reached out and killed him, right? So God is still there with them. In this weird, you look at what the beginning of Genesis is, and it's trying to understand that question of who are we, how do we get here, and why. This lends into that in Cain's history and the descendants of Cain, coming out of Enoch, of why are they just tough and rough, and why is it so bad, and this is why. This helps tell that story of why they got to where they were and how.
So you're talking about an origin story.
No.
Does Tony Stark get to make an appearance in this too?
I don't know. It's a not named Genesis for no reason.
I think this is where, like, I think our whole purpose with, like, these kind of things that we do when we walk through, like, we did this with the book of Acts, and now we're doing it with the book of Genesis. We really want you to kind of familiarize yourself with the story that's really there, and not the story that we were given on the felt boards, whenever that happened. I know for me, it happened when I was 17. The youth director used felt boards to teach then. So,
sweet baby Jesus.
Yes. And so, we all have that felt board faith within us. If you grew up in it, if it's something that you had in you, and that there's more to the story than those coloring sheets. And I think that this is where our deep dive into this comes into play. And I think it's very healthy for you to do that. And so, I definitely want to encourage you to dive into this and ask yourself, like, as you look at this, like, how am I responding to the gift that God gives gives me? And what's my heart? Where's my heart in all of this? Am I being, am I being, I don't know, joyful, or am I appreciative would be a better word. Am I appreciative of what God gives me, or am I spiteful because of it? And that's a good heart issue. That's a good way for us to measure where we're at. And
right. And then it lends to the question of, why am I giving? Am I giving because my pastor or church told me I had to give? Am I giving because I think I'm going to get something in return? Or am I giving with this glad heart, no matter what it is, how much it is, wherever it is, right? At least as Methodists, we believe in prayers, presence, gift, service, and witness being the fullness of what we give. And are we giving in a way that's healthy, that's graceful, that's loving, rather than taking a look at the pocketbook or taking a look at, oh God, I spent that much time, right? With that little bit of resent of what am I getting in return? It's an interesting balance of healthy stewardship, right?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a good place to land for today. And we'll encourage you to go to our website at beardedtheologians.com and check out all of our great content. You can even support the podcast by buying a couple t-shirts or coffee mugs. And we just thank you for your time and listening. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
First, guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.